to join. This week is a continuation of last week's topic, which we were covering the aspects of maximizing value addition and market access. We had a very interesting session last week with three panelists who are under moderator Nekesa Wafula, who took us through aspects of market access. And I think we were able to actually see from the presentations, if I can just do a very quick recap. We had a presentation on standards that gave us an overview from Jen Musindi, and from that presentation, it was very clear about the issue of uniformity and trusts, and the fact that standards are meant to generate uniformity and trust between all value chain actors. That presentation was followed by insights from Nicholas Sambanya, who works with Trigger Foods. And I think Nicholas gave us very good aspects on how market access can actually be improved, whether you're a small farmer or a medium farmer, and that is through the power of aggregation and collective action. And his presentation highlighted that through aggregation of services and joining up in the aggregation model, it is possible to reduce post-harvest losses and actually ensure continuity of supply, which is a critical aspect from the buyer side. They want that assurance that they will always have access to supplies. So we were given very, very key insights. And as an introduction to tonight's session, one of the aspects that I'd like to highlight is what Nicholas Sambanya picked on, that even just through the grading of the bananas, which is actually an aspect of value addition, they were able to reduce losses and increase returns for the farmers. And tonight, that's what we want to dwell on. What exactly can agripreneurs and entrepreneurs in general in agribusiness do in terms of value addition in order to maximize their chances for market access? We're going to have Nicholas Sambanya just to respond to some of the queries, even as we unpack what exactly are some of the critical things when it comes to value addition. But to start us off, we're going to have Jen Musindi continue with her presentation of standards, and she's going to be unfolding the KS 1758 standard. And then followed by a discussion where we will bring on board Nekesa Wafula. So tonight, Nekesa is on the bench, she's not moderating. She's had a reasonable background, even in value addition, with equipment and technologies that support value addition. So we'll get Nekesa's perspective on what ails producers and other entrepreneurs when it comes to value addition. And of course, with Nicholas and Jen Musindi on board, we'll be able to examine how, through again the use of standards, we can all maximize the opportunities that are out there and have considerable success when it comes to value addition. So without further ado, I'm just going to let Jen Musindi start with her presentation, and then we shall go to the discussion thereafter. Jen, welcome.
Thanks, Ricky. Again, I'm not sure I should introduce myself because we have the same topic from last week. It's just a continuation, but I'm Jen Musindi. I'm a panelist today, and we shall talk about the importance of standards in trade, and specifically we shall look into the importance of KS 1758 standard as a Kenyan requirement, and it is now a requirement for horticulture producers, dealers, value chain actors to be regulated. So this standard is with KEBS at the moment. So without further ado, let us just dive in. This is just an introduction. If you need deeper training in the standard, you will have to contact HCD the Horticultural Crops Development, Horticultural Crops Authority, Directorate, sorry. So I will start. So Winnie, let me just share from my side. So this is an introduction to the KS78 Code of Practice for Horticulture. So the content of the standard is we have an introduction to the standard. If you buy it from KEBS, you will get this arrangement within the standard. So you'll have an introduction. Then it will tell you what the scope of the standard is. It will give you the application, why it should be and where it should be applied. It will give you the normative references, which means that what areas in law, in the Kenyan regulations, they have derived a lot of the requirements from. It will define the terms that are in the standard. Then it will have a management system, cultural practices, labor practices, and so on. So the breakdown will be clear as I go through the standard. So what is KS 1758? If you see it depicts 2016. All that this means is that it was it came on board in 2016. It was actualized by KEBS in 2016. So every standard is in place for 5 years before it is reviewed. So it is due for review now, but as it is now, it is supposed to be in use. What I'm hearing is that from January 2021, all dealers, all actors in horticulture are supposed to be aware of this standard and should have started implementing it. Now, it is in two parts. So part one is for flowers and part two is for fruits, vegetables, and herbs. So it covers, so we'll deal today with part two. Part two mostly covers issues on food safety, environmental sustainability, and social accountability. And as I said, all industry value chain players will be expected to follow the laid down procedures to ensure that horticultural produce is produced and handled in a responsible way at every point. It harmonizes with the existing international codes on good agricultural practice and guidelines. For example, it has brought together what is required in Global GAP, what is required in, for example, the TESCO requirements, what is required in, for example, the M&S requirements. So the writers, the drafters of this code went through considered all other international codes that all our producers are subjected to, and therefore this is a harmonized standard. It enhances farm assurance systems, compliance with relevant laws of Kenya, and strict adherence to safe use of chemicals. And now compliance is key and is about what we must do. The scope specifies the requirements for legal compliance, responsible and safe production. I'm not sure I'm sharing. I think you can now see it. Sorry, the standard, it specifies requirements for legal compliance and responsible and safe production of fruits, vegetables, and herbs. It applies to all players in the industry, including but not limited to growers, propagators, breeders, transporters, consolidators, traders, shippers, and cargo handlers. Now, the normative references include the Food and Drugs and Chemical Substances Act, CAP 254, the Standard Act, CAP 2496, Employment Act, Environmental Management and Coordination Act, also known as MCA, NHIF Fund Act, NSSF Fund Act, Pest Control Products Act, Physical Planning Act. So it has references to all our laws, so that it makes it easier for operators to know how they shall comply with the laws of Kenya. Somebody will ask, why should I follow KS 1758 if I already have Global Gap? Remember, Global Gap is an international standard. So it will not have specific references to our local laws. So that's why it's important to get yourself informed of what the standard says, because it also quotes what our local legal requirements are. So requirements of the standard. There's the management system. So this one is a framework of policies, processes, and procedures used by an organization to ensure that it can fulfill all the tasks required to achieve its objectives. And it gives the operator requirements of a management system for implementing this standard. Then it requires that there's a presence of a written social environmental policy. So this one is just, you have to put down how your activities are affecting your social environment and your environmental environment around you, where the environment means the natural surroundings around you. How are you affecting your surroundings, and how are you making sure that you don't adversely affect your surroundings? Then you're required to carry out risk assessment. There are about 12 or 13 of them. So whoever is preparing the compliance documents must know how to prepare risk assessment. That's the first requirement for competency of the person who is taking care of your system, and provide measures for mitigation of identified risks. Then you have to manage your internal audits. First, you must have at least one internal audit a year. Not saying that it will be one, it will be at least one. So if you have two, the better. And that the internal audits also must have corrective actions and timelines. So that management of internal audits, you must put it in your management system policy. Complaints handling, you must have a procedure on how you're going to handle complaints, whether it's from your customer. With the NEMA requirements now, you have to know how to handle complaints from your neighbors, from your suppliers. So there must be a policy of how you shall handle it. For example, who shall receive the complaint when it first comes in? How long will it take for it to go through the system? And at what point will you get back to the person complaining? Traceability system. Now, this is a really, in some countries, it's a legal requirement. It will be a legal requirement once our crop act comes through, our crop regulations. So it just says that you must be able to trace one step back and one step forward of the produce you're dealing with. If you're a farmer, where did you get your inputs from, and who did you sell your produce to, and everything around it. And then for a standard to be seen to be working, you must keep your records, and you must have a policy on how these records will be kept, who will fill them, how will they be trained. So basically, the Kenyan standard says you must keep these records for at least 2 years. I know the accounting ones say you keep for 5 years, but this one requires only 2 years. So cultural practices, under cultural practices, you need to have control on your choice of variety or rootstock or seed. You must buy these from purchase or buy these from a reputable registered supplier. If you're producing your own seed, for example, you have your own, if you're growing fruit trees and you're producing your own seedlings, you must still keep sanitary conditions. You must show your records of where you got your scions and your tops from, and how you grafted, who grafted, how you kept how you sprayed, how you fertilized those trees. So you must keep your records. So you must show control of where you got these varieties from. If seed treatments are carried out, they must be carried out in a controlled manner. You must show control of your nursery stock if you're only a nursery dealer. The policy on genetically modified organism, GMOs. You must know where you're going to sell your product. What do they feel about GMO? Because there's no use of using them and you can't sell them. And even if you're producing normal, not non-GMO products, once you introduce a GMO product, there can be possible contamination. So you must show control. So the area under GMO, first of all, I think in Kenya, we are yet to embrace GMO on food. The only GMO I know has been embraced in cotton. So you must show a cause and you must have permits for you to deal in GMOs. In your site selection, you must make sure you have looked at everything that would cause contamination on your product and maybe adversely affect your production. For example, if the site initially had, it was a dump site, then you must be careful not to use it, because then there will be contamination of, for example, heavy metals. And this must have a recorded documentation to show that you actually have considered all these requirements. Number 3 is labor, employment, and social issues. In flowers, I think mostly, and our horticulture, this is usually our weak point, because most of the labor we use, if it's a smallholder farmer, is family labor. But the moment you introduce outsiders to the family, then you must take care of these outsiders. Now, wages, you must pay within what the government says is a minimal wage. Housing, if you're providing housing, it must be to the standard that is required. You shall not provide worse housing than you would live in, for example. If you're going to transport your workers, do not use something like, you just don't use any transport. If you use, for example, a canter or a pickup, an open pickup is for goods. So transport will be assessed in the same way that they assess PSVs, the public service vehicles. So if they say somebody must sit on a seat with a seat belt, if you're going to provide transport, that is the same standard that you're going to be expected to have. For staff recruitment and promotion, there should be no discrimination. Again, it's a weakness in our industry because we have very many female workers and very many male supervisors. So there's a lot of gray areas when it comes to recruitment and promotion. It must be seen to be fair, and you must also recruit according to somebody's qualifications. If they are qualified and if they can do the job, you will recruit. However, there are some jobs that are recommended to be only done by one gender. For example, spraying can only be done by males. Females are not recommended to do spraying work because, one, they carry generations, and two, their systems are more susceptible to chemical contamination. Induction and training, whenever a new employee comes to you, you must train them on how the working conditions around your workplace. It is your responsibility to make sure they know everything around your workplace, and you must offer training for on-the-job training. For example, an induction will say, if it's a farm, will say, we shall work 3 hours, then a break, then we shall work another 3 hours. If you need to go to the bathrooms are there, and there. For training, once they are employed and they want to maybe know how to prune a seedling, then you must show them how this seedling will be pruned. You must train them. Work contracts, everyone must have a contract for work, whether it is a temporary worker, whether it's a permanent worker, whether it's a seasonal worker, which specifies all the requirements this employee should be kept under. What you agree with your employee, between you and that employee, is put down in the work contract. If there's a dispute, the work contract will have almost 80% weight on how you shall resolve this dispute. Work hours and leave days, you must honor these in the laws, Employment Act. So you must, it says, if it says 8 hours or 7.5 hours, or they'll say the weekly maximum, then you must work them for that amount of time. If it is a temporary worker, the casuals, please note that if they work continuously and they are on a register with you for more than, I think it is 2 weeks, that person is no longer a casual worker, because now you expect them to turn up every day. And you must prorata leave days for as long as they are with you. Every month passed must have a prorated leave day. And then still on labor and social issues, you must develop policies. There must be a written policy on termination, workman's compensation, freedom of association. Now for freedom of association, it says, if around you your workers do not have a union or do not have access to a union, then it is your responsibility to make sure they form one, or they are involved in a union or a welfare. It is up to you, but they must be free to associate in whatever way they feel comfortable. The reason for this is that for some workers, it will be difficult to approach management if they have an issue. So they are allowed to go through other methods to come and present their grievances to you. Then you must have grievance and disciplinary procedures, because your staff must understand, if I am aggrieved, who should I go to? How will it be handled uniformly? If I do anything wrong, to what degree can I be disciplined? What is the worst I can do? So that, if you fire, you can't fire me for being late one day. What is the worst I can do to get fired, for example? There should be no forced labor. I know we joke about this, but in most farms, employees leave their IDs at the gate, their original IDs. That is forced labor, because for them to get the IDs back, they must have worked a certain number of hours. Do not force them to leave IDs at the gate. You can take copies, because with an original ID, they can still walk out. And work should be freely offered. You can't force somebody to work for you. Discrimination and harassment, that one I think is self-explanatory. It is not allowed even in law. Child labor, this one is interesting, because especially where farms are located in the rural areas. Now, in the cultural practice in that rural area, if there's early child marriage for the girls and she gets a family, children, then how is she supposed to take care of her family if she can't work? So again, this is a gray area, but the law says, since we subscribe to the International Labour Organization laws, recommendations, so a child below 18 cannot work for you commercially. You must find a way for them to engage in the work you'll give them. Management of outgrowers and outgrower associations, this must be open. How you price, how you engage outgrowers, how you deal with outgrowers, who will deal with these outgrowers, there must be a policy on that. And then management of visitors and subcontractors, because these are not people who are every day within your organization. You must have a policy on how they shall be handled. And this policy must be communicated to everyone within your staff. Then we have environmental management, which is a new area for most of us. Now, farming and environment are inseparably linked. The operator shall develop an environmental management plan. Now, before you start your operations, it is required that you apply for a permit to NEMA, and their general requirement, they give procedures for how you're going to do this. So part of this is to do an impact assessment, environmental impact assessment. So everything must be done according to the law. So then develop policies on packaging, resource minimization, energy resource use and management, integrated waste and pollution management, biodiversity and ecological conservation, and soil conservation. You realize all this mean that we have to conserve our environment and minimize the waste that is going out. Then if we are using renewable sources, fuel, non-renewable energy sources like fuel, then you must show how you're going to change this to example like solar, how you're going to improve your use of your energy. Finally, we go to legal and contractual obligations. You're supposed to comply with applicable national laws. That one is a must. And then any binding regional and international treaties and agreements. We have the COMESA regional requirements. We have the EAC now. So you're supposed to comply with all of that. And that means you have to get information of what these agreements say. Operators will respect intellectual property rights. You shall not, the one that touches most on us is seeds. You will buy the first batch of seed from a reputable registered supplier. Then you shall decide to produce the next generation of seed by yourself using that seed. What the law says is that you must obtain permission from that, the supplier who will obtain permission from the owner of the seed for you to be allowed to produce your own seed from that hybrid seed. The reason for this is because when they're developing this seed, it goes through a lot of rigorous tests. And during that time, there's a lot of improvements that are made. If you continue growing your own seed from the first one, it means that whatever improvements were done, they will be watered down consecutively every time you produce another generation of seed. So you have to seek permission. Operators shall obtain written information from prospective owners of seed companies or breeders about guarantee policies. So if I produce a subsequent generation from this seed, what guarantee do I have that it will be true to the type that is depicted there, which would include a plant health assurance in compliance with the Plant Protection Act, Cap 324, and Seeds and Plant Varieties Act, Cap 326. Royalties will be within internationally accepted ranges or as negotiated by parties. Arbitration shall be through national laid down regulations and procedures. Most of our contract says it will be HCD that is responsible for arbitration within our industry. And then operators of nurseries shall ensure the facilities are registered by the competent authority. In this case, we have HCD and CAFES. If you have questions, please get in touch with SOCA. We shall be able to answer them. Thank you, Teresa. Nekesa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen. And I think I'll hand over to Ricky. Thank you.
Yeah, Jen, again, thank you very much for that presentation and taking us through the aspects of 1758. I know many of our viewers may wonder, with regards to the topic of value addition, why again go through the standard, but I think it's very important for us to recognize that one of the critical principles for any successful agribusiness is sustainability. And sustainability does involve compliance and due diligence in terms of care for the environment, care for social aspects. And this standard 1758 is not the only standard, but it is the standard within horticulture space. And we are using it as a background and just to give us that clarity on the applicability of standards. I think, again, we must appreciate that when it comes to value addition, there are processes and activities that may have negative impact to the environment. That's very critical for any agribusiness entrepreneur to appreciate what the standards require and put those measures in place, whether you're new or your business is already established, because as Jen Musindi did say, this standard is coming into force, and while it is a private standard, it has its background in consultative processes with the government, and there are parts of it that will be enforced through applicable regulations. Now, I want to bring on board our panelists, and this is the discussion segment, and I'm going to start with Teresa Wafula. As I had said previously, Teresa has had experience in aspects of value addition and especially technologies that support value addition. And I would like, just by starting with a broad question, which Teresa, I think you will lead in response to, but then Nicolas Sambanya, who's also joined us, will be in a position to contribute, and Jen Musindi as well. We also have in the background with us, Professor Jen Ambuko of UON, who spoke to us 2 weeks ago on post-harvest handling, and of course brought out some issues that relate to value addition. So Teresa, maybe I'll start with you. What exactly, when we talk of value addition, it seems to be a not very well understood concept, and many times we hear producers approaching value addition as a last resort. When they miss a market for their produce that may be what you'd call ready or fresh, then they resort to value addition, and we hear of rudimentary practices. But what exactly does it mean when you talk of value addition, and what are some of the key requirements to consider um, from a perspective of value addition?
Thank you so much, Ricky. And my name is Nekesa Wafula. And just to talk about value addition, value addition in its definition, how it is, it's just value addition. If you picked a product from, say, let's take, for example, a mango. If you picked a mango and sliced it, just sliced it and probably put it in a bag, that's already value addition because it's not in the form that it was found, when you picked it on the tree. So value addition in itself is just taking a product and transforming it into another form that can still be edible or still be utilized by anybody in the market. And that fact that you're having value addition, it means that you're not going to get the same price as you got say at farm gate. So when we are talking about value addition and the transformation that takes place in value addition, we are talking about taking a product, making it into a form that is probably acceptable or accepted in the market, or you found a niche, there's an opportunity that the market has presented. I'll still use the example of the mango. Maybe people love eating chilled mangoes, and you found that it's better to dry them and add a bit of spice. That is value addition, and you have your niche market. So the reason, a question you've asked about the turnaround by people who just do value addition because they've not gotten a market is because we deal with fresh. But again, we should not just be taking products and turning them into other products because we've not gotten a market. It's time we looked at value addition as part of the value chain, not just turning products into other products because you've not gotten a market. So when you're talking about, say you take a mango and because you feel it's going to, get spoiled the next day, you make juice out of it. I don't think that's a way we should go. We should have standards, just what Jen has said. We should have standards in growing crops that are used for value addition. We should have standards in terms of handling, because you cannot just take a mango from the market because it's, the way they dump them at Marikiti or the city market, then you pick them and go and do make juice out of it or make puree out of it because they'll go bad. There's a standard that has to be followed. So we as those in agriculture and even farmers need to understand the steps that you have to take when it comes to value addition. Let's all try to look at what has been set, the policies that are in place. If you visited a place like Kenya Institute of Research and Development, they'll take you through KIRDI. They'll take you through the process of acquisition of materials that are necessary for value addition. If you're doing agriculture, if you're doing, those things that are required in value addition, they'll also take you through the policies that are involved. They'll take you through what KEBS requires. So we need to be very keen when we are looking at value addition and not look at it as an alternative to, to just picking product. Let's change it into juice. Pick product, let's slice it and dry it because you're going to lose a fresh product. Let's look at it as value addition in a serious way, and in a way that we can also get value for what we are getting, and also the nutritive value. Because again, if something is going to spoil, you don't expect it to have the same nutritional value as that which was grown specifically for value addition. Thank you, Ricky. Back to you.
Thanks, Nekesa. So I think from your point, what is critical is that it must be carefully and deliberately decided by the entrepreneur what aspects of value addition they are going to pursue, and it starts all the way from the grading of the produce, just to make it easier to work with in terms of the different market requirements. But let me bring in Nicholas Ambani at this point. And Nicholas, we're just picking up from what we discussed with you last week. And my question would be this: in terms of some of the perhaps obvious but not well exploited aspects of value addition, such as just grading and sorting of products, how are we doing? And is it something that markets actually, and especially domestic markets, do they actively reward those kind of endeavors? Or after all that effort and labor by a producer, will they still get the same price irrespective of the work that they have put in, just from a simple practice such as grading and sorting of their produce?
Thank you very much, Ricky. I think one most important thing that you brought out is that traditionally people have thought about value addition as, manufacturing only, where you convert one product to another. But just the way you brought it out, that and as Nekesa explained earlier on, just a different way of presentation, or a different way of handling the product can mean value addition. But what actually the Kenyan farmer or the farmer of this part of the world needs to do, as you say, they need to understand that they need to look at the product they grow and the potential that exists in that product to generate more value for them in terms of price, in terms of revenue. And so that is why, as Nekesa said, value addition should not be a last resort. It should be, in fact, the first thing, to the extent whereby by the time you are selling a raw product, you've exhausted, all the options of value addition, because value addition is basically increasing your worth, or the worth of that product. Now, the farmers in Kenya can actually exploit this way of value addition from a simple, practice as we just mentioned in terms of grading, whereby if you do, for example, potatoes of a particular size, you target a certain market that would like this kind of grade, that kind of grade. Now, what I've seen from the Trigger Foods perspective, actually, this aspect of simple, basic value addition brings in convenience. So, for example, when we are selling potatoes for a chips vendor, we'll grade these potatoes into purely the right size that is suitable for the machine that prepares chips. This particular grade will then go for a premium price. So while we are selling the ordinary mix of potatoes at 28 shillings, we'll be selling at 38, 40 shillings, a premium grade that we've done. So firstly, you brought convenience to the consumer or the customer, and therefore the customer is therefore willing to pay more. And you can imagine that there are varieties of potatoes, for example, that actually can give you 80% large. So if you sell those varieties as ordinary potatoes, then you lose out on your ability or the option of being able to grade them into specific grades that are required by specific clients or specific clientele, where you can then obtain high value. And so basic value addition comes with convenience. It comes with the ability to target specific specialized market, and all those aspects generate a premium price for those particular products. And therefore, that's how now we should look at it. Not necessarily doing a product to export or to make it more complicated. Just the packaging, the grading, the presentation. You can imagine, for example, if I'm an executive and I want to pass by a market and carry potatoes, what kind of bag should I use so that I'm able to move that bag easily in the public transport and things like that? Or what kind of a bag do I need so that the potatoes are able to stay longer? Recently, we introduced a bag, I think a food is called the breathable bag, because it was during the wet period, and when the rest of the farmers were using the ordinary gunny bag that is more nylon, as you know it, the potatoes were not lasting. And so we came up with the concept of breathable bags that are actually allowing a lot of air circulation in the potato value chain. And therefore, we were able to gain better market acceptance and a better price, because our potatoes, when they are bought in that bag, they will actually last 3 days more longer than the ordinary other bag. Those are the kind of value addition aspects we are talking about. They don't have to be complicated. And every Kenyan can study the kind of market they're targeting, understand that market, and seize opportunities of value addition that exist just by saying, how more convenient can I make this product to my target consumer? Thank you, Ricky.
Thanks, Nicholas. And I'll bring in Jen Musindi. But Nicholas, maybe you will also, and Nekesa, you might also be in a position to comment on this. When we look at just the aspect of grading and sorting, while it seems from what Nicholas you say that there is direct value and benefit, even accessing a premium price, then the question comes: are these grades known, or is it guesswork? We don't seem to have the information out there. So what's the best way that producers would then approach this particular issue? How do they start to organize themselves so that they know the desired grades that are out there? It still seems to be very, very disjointed in terms of information access for producers especially.
Thanks, Ricky. In one of our earlier presentations, we had said that before you start producing any produce, part of your planning process will involve assessing what your market requires. You need to find out what your market will require. There's different requirements for different markets. For example, if you want to deal with a customer who supplies institutional clients, then, for example, if you give them simply like an onion, if you give them small to medium sized onions, they will reject them because that is not what they want. Most institutional clients like the big sized produce, so that they don't waste time in preparation. So you need to know what your customer will target, and you need to know how much of this produce is likely to be produced from the seeds and the husbandry practices that you will have. So if you say you will produce 50% big ones, and then a medium, and then a small, because for most farming operations, that will happen. You will need to assess who will you then target for these remaining grades. Grades are usually provided for by the customer. Some of the produce, like the internationally traded produce, have standard grades. For example, a bean, a pea will have a grade attached to it internationally, but that is because people are used to them. If we go to the outside market and you start thinking of a grade, for example, a banana, which we only deal with here, a green banana, leave alone the ripe ones, then you're likely not to get this information. Only your customer can give you this information on grades. And it is up to the farmer or the marketing person that the farmer has agreed with to find out which customer will take what grade and what grades, how they come up with these grades. Maybe Nicholas can add on to that.
Thank you. You said it very well, Jen. When you talk about grades in the local Kenyan context, they are still, customer focused and customer based. You'll call way back when we were just starting Europe Cup, and it was a Europe thing, and therefore supermarkets in UK, each one of them were coming up with their own standards. So if you're having an audit Ricky, after Mark and Spence have left, we have to turn things upside down because Tesco is coming. After Tesco has left, we have to change a few things because, you know, Asda is coming and they have their own thing. So, but then Global Gap has come in and a few others that are trying to level the playing ground so that we don't have to conform to many standards. Now, that's where we are now in the Kenyan context. Even Jen, you'll be surprised that the medium of Kawangware is not the same medium of Machakos. When the season of onions started here in Kenya around after a very long drought, we began harvesting large onion farms in Naivasha. We had to introduce a fourth grade. So because we used to have small, we used to have four. There's a smaller than small that's called numberless. And then you have small, then you have medium, then you have large. Now we had to introduce a grade called extra large because of perception. What is large to you is extra large to someone else. And so different markets had different mediums, different large, different small to them. So it is still client based. What I'm thinking that as we move into this space now and the under case 1758, where the local crops now properly are covered well, I think part of what we should be championing for, and as soccer we are in better position, is that again we start coming up with what we call national grades, and this will just make marketing a lot more easier because then we will have customers to try and conform to grades that are that are standard with only a few variations, as opposed now to where you grow your crop and then you realize that the standard the grade you thought is the right one isn't the right one. So yes, it's still customer focus. Right now you still have to understand your customer, what they need, and there are also changing needs of these grades. And it's not just the preference. The other day we were struggling to sell large onions because of the profit story. When the prices of onions go down, for example, the vendors prefer to sell medium, small onions. When the prices go up, they'll be looking now for large onions. So there are many dynamics in the market. And I think a national standardization of these grades of our common staple and usual foods would really come and help in organizing the market. Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you very much, Jen and Nicholas. I want to bring in Professor Jen Ambuko, who is also with us on panel. And Professor Ambuko, you've had considerable experience with the mango value chain. Perhaps just to give us that perspective, how do we go about trying to bridge these differences? Because as Nicholas has said, and it's very dynamic, even between markets that are physically removed within one area, you find just to agree on a grade is still a challenge. So based on your experience with the mango value chain, maybe you would shed some light on how best we can demystify and also probably drive acceptance of aspects such as grading in order just to grow markets for value addition. Professor Ambuko.
Yes, Ricky, I'm not so sure that I am the right person to answer the question about grading. But from just working with the mango farmers, I had Nicholas and also Kesa say that, you see, why do I value add? Why would, you see what happens with the, fruits and veggies, people just, for mangoes, for example, people just pack them up in the lorry or in the pickup and then get them to the market, in the pickup. And then, of course, along the way, the wastage happens and more waste happens at the market. So we have tried, we've been trying to help farmers to appreciate, like you said, value addition is not just processing or, those other high level, additions like we're talking. Just grading, packaging is in itself value addition. I've worked with mango farmers in Embu and Machakos, and one of the things we try to do is what Nicholas just mentioned, that just telling them, when you harvest mangoes, you can actually sort them by size, by the stage of ripeness. That in itself is value addition. So me as a farmer or an aggregator, like the farmers I was working with in an aggregation center, we grade that way, right? So you arrange them in a crate. Maybe this is different varieties, say Ngoe, and this is Tommy, and this is Van Dyke. That itself, you've added value, as opposed to, when you just put them in a heap and the trader comes and, but the challenge then is when the farmer has done the value addition, because it takes some extra effort, will the traders pay for that added value? Because that then became the challenge, because I worked with these farmers and I told them, I don't want to see, because we built for them an aggregation center with cold room and everything. And I said, you cannot just put mangoes mixed up in the cold room. You got to do some grading, sorting, so that when the trader comes, you can pick this crate and say, this is Ngoe, this stage, this is Tommy, this stage, this size, everything nice and sorted. But the traders will not hear that. They should be able to pay more, because the farmer or the aggregator has gone the extra mile. So the challenge is that what they are willing to pay for the added value is not worth the effort. So if the traders are not willing to pay for the extra effort, then that's why you find farmers can even just harvest the mangoes and leave them under the tree, all mixed up, and the trader will come, they're gonna pay pittance anyway, 3 shillings or 5 shillings a piece. So why should I struggle to add value if somebody's not going to pay for that value? That's the thing that we have to work with the traders. They got to pay for the value added, because remember, when you do the sorting and the grading, in itself, it contributes not only to fetch more value, but it also contributes to reduction of waste. Yeah. So farmers do this. We're training them to reduce waste, but then the added value must be paid for. If it's not paid for, nobody's going to do it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Mbuko. So we see the challenge is twofold, and it's really a matter of trying to bridge that gap. I've seen from one of our participants the question or the comment. This is from Arnold Opio, that grades or standards were developed from the 1990s onwards by KEBS, and his question is what became of these standards or grades, because from his perspective, the problem is one of implementation and awareness. So Jen Musindi, maybe you would comment on that, because yes, we did say that apart from the KS 1758, there are a number of other standards that have been developed by KEBS, and this is what Arnold is referring to. So how come these standards are not shaping the space so that when it comes to value addition, there is uniformity, and probably then making it easier for producers especially to have a bargaining power when it comes to how they interact with the traders. What's happening with these standards, Jen?
Thanks, Ricky. Now, he has quoted the 90s. Standards and most of these documents, they are reviewed or supposed to be reviewed every 5 years, because if you get a classification from the 1990s, you will probably get that the current varieties of crops or products that we have now will not fit in those standards, because probably there have been improvements in production, there have been improvements, seeds have improved, and other varieties and players have come in. So they have very different looking produce now. So we need to actually upgrade these standards and grades, because again, as Ambanya said, it is very fluid. You can find what is large now may not be large when it is very hot. For example, the customers are able to take something else that was medium that is now large. So they undergo a lot of improvements and changes. Again, our standards are supposed to be reviewed regularly to incorporate any changes that may have happened. Again, he mentioned about Europe Gap. Europe Gap has undergone maybe 3 or 4 changes to make it what it is now, because it has incorporated a lot of additions and improvements to what we were aware of. So yes, I agree that the problem is with implementation and awareness, especially for the farmers, because we had gone through a session previously where we said most farmers in Kenya they do farming, they don't do agriculture. So we need to get people to actually think of what they are going to do seriously. So part of that is planning, and part of the planning is actually doing a market study of which customers will require what. Then it goes down to the seed you're going to plant. So get yourself informed, because again, the government is not in a position to keep informing you, but they have provided avenues for how farmers and any other person can get this information. So it's up to us to find out where this information sits and update ourselves on it. Thank you.
Great. Now, we unfortunately were not able to have Nicholas Kahiga join us today because of a loss in the family, but we hope to have Nicholas and 1 or 2 other panelists who are working with agribusinesses that are actively working with the processing of different commodities and supplying processed products into markets to give us a bit more light in terms of the challenges from their perspective, because it's good to also appreciate the perspective of traders who are actively looking for value-added products. So we may not be in a position to address that today, but I would want to ask Nekesa, from her working experience with technology that was supporting value addition. Broadly speaking, what are the most common value addition options that are actually available, and there is a market in terms of market for those products? And additional to that, would you also speak about the costs or investment that one needs to consider for some of the options that or the technologies that you were actively involved in disseminating? Thanks.
Thanks, Ricky. Speaking on technologies, there are various types of technologies that you can utilize. I'll start from our ancestors, or rather our great-grandmothers, our grandmothers, what they were using. We have fermentation, where you find the traditional vegetables were fermented to elongate the shelf life of these products, and they kept adding milk and cream on those vegetables. That was one way of these ways of value addition. Then we have also drying, and that has become really common, and I'll speak more about drying of vegetables and fruits, which has become very common, and it's really picking up in the market. We also have freeze drying technologies that are also coming up very fast, and of course that is also sort of top-notch technology, but again, we'll speak about it just maybe in brief. So when I touch on drying technologies, there are various ways of doing it. Some people are using solar drying, some people are using electricity to dry, some are using biomass to dry, and all these technologies are available in the market. Most of these will, like the drying technology, for example, will just remove moisture. We know when you remove moisture, you're definitely stopping or slowing down the process of microbes to produce and be able to cause, say, what is it called, like getting spoiled, the process of spoilage. Basically, it's being slowed down, or even totally we kind of like freeze this process from happening. So when you're looking at drying, our forefathers used to dry it out used to use the normal solar to dry. And currently there are technologies that are surrounding this. I'm sure if you go to like the University of Nairobi, where Professor Ambuko is, there's even some technologies there that use solar that you can learn, equipments that you can easily even, modify to suit you, or even purchase at a very low price. Most of them are below $1,000, which is about 100,000. I've seen some that are costing even 70,000, between 70 to 50 to 70,000 for small scale. Yeah, some are using greenhouses, the normal greenhouses, and modifying them to actually blow in heat and extract some moisture so that they can be able to dry. People are becoming innovative around solar and using technologies that can actually make them, dry and have these products out in the market. The market is huge, the market is growing for dried products, dried mango. People are the healthy lifestyles that are kicking in are making people snack more on the fruits than even snacking more on the crisps. So if someone is given potato chips versus dried mango, some people would prefer the dried mango. So even the lifestyles, as we change our lifestyles, as we grow older, know the benefits of these products, then you end up preferring the dried products. Dried vegetables, we know what that means. There's a lot of exports of dried vegetables. When you're talking about, probably if you look at even the Kenyans living in the diaspora, when they're traveling, there's some vegetables they would want to have, like the nightshade or the spider plant or the cowpea leaves. So most of them would dry this and go out with them. So people have found opportunity in exporting some of these products. At the University of Nairobi, there's actually a food processing unit, a hub, where you can go and learn all these processes about various ways in which you can utilize these technologies. Freeze drying is one of the latest technologies I've seen in the market. I'm yet to interact with it, but just in brief, from reading about it and from the fact that even mangoes now are being frozen. We have frozen mangoes, not freeze dried, but frozen mangoes going to China. We have the freeze drying is basically, it's a technology where you can keep these products for years. For drying, for example, you can keep them up to 2 years if you keep them in a vacuum bag. But for freeze drying, you'll keep them even for longer, even 20 years, you can still keep these products. If I take the example of some of the products I know that have been purchased in that freeze dried state. So technology is evolving. Some of these technologies are high, they are really costly. If you talk, I've mentioned about solar dryers, about 50,000 to about 100,000, you can get one installed for you. When you're talking about electrical and some of the biomass driven dryers, you're talking about between that maybe 100,000 to even up to 3 million Kenya shillings, depending on the technology that you're buying, and also what quality of product you want to have. Some take 12 hours, some take 24 hours, some depend on the extraction of moisture. The really good ones take about 6 hours to have your product dried, and you have your dried products. So we have quite a bit in the market right now, Ricky.
Thank you very much, Nekesa. And I see again that comment, a follow-up comment on the issue of the standards. I think, Jen, this just comes back to you, that maybe it seems one of the hurdles may be who is actually brought on board when these standards are being made, and how actively, especially considering that a lot of products move in market segments that may be considered more informal. I think Nicholas gave us an overview of that. So if when we are forming the standards, I'm talking about issues such as the grades. If we do not bring on board the market actors at the stage or the level of these more informal wholesale markets, are we really going to have some breakthrough? And maybe Jen, you would comment on that. But even as you do that, I think again, to Nicholas, maybe if you're able to give us the perspective in terms of the shifts in the market that will actually take us to a point where traders are actively pursuing value addition and are willing to make that extra or pay that extra coin? What are some of the things that producers must do and engage in right from the start? And I think this speaks more to the issue of market requirements, because as it has been said, you must know what the market needs. So Jen, maybe let's start with you and then have a comment from Nicholas. Thanks.
Thanks, Ricky. If I give a brief history, before we became a bit more industrialized than we are now, we were used to, buying food or getting food from sources that we can see or we know. It was a very short supply chain that we used to use. For example, even if you're buying your products from your mama mboga across the gate or at your corner, you probably were buying something that she grew herself. But now with the enlargement of the market needs, market segment, for example, more people are coming to urban centers to work. Therefore, not much is, you will not know possibly where your food is coming from. So the players in between have increased, and the distance from the farmer to the market has also increased. That is where the need for standards came in. In the 90s, we didn't take standards very, very, very seriously. So the government because they need to keep us all safe, we need to have safe food. They used to sit by themselves and come up with standards and regulations. But right now, because more people are becoming aware of what they require and how they need to improve their lives, they're becoming concerned that they're getting thrown at information that they didn't participate in. More people are participating in business or food. So therefore, yes, they're now becoming interested in what laws and regulations are being passed. Mostly it was laws and regulations. Private standards were not very common for domestic market. But now, because of, again, what I said, the people that are buying food have increased, and therefore the distance between where the food is grown and where it is consumed has increased, people are starting to get involved in standards. So what KEBS is now doing, before they review or come up with a standard, they will get all stakeholders involved into a technical committee that will review or come up with this standard. And these technical committees will involve all players, at least a representation of all players within that value chain. And by doing so, then everybody's needs, to an extent, will be taken care of. Right now, that's why I was saying we can't dwell with information that was developed maybe 10 years ago. It is changing rapidly. So there are changes as we go along. So even changes in the way laws and standards came about. If you get a standard that really as a business you cannot utilize, or it is making you lose more than you are supposed to benefit from, then it is up to you to involve your local office, legal offices, so that there has to be redress, because a government is supposed to take care of its population, whether you're a customer or a seller. So it is up to you to make noise and let people know where your issues are. Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, Nicholas, let me just have a clarification as you make the comment on the market requirements. I think what I would really want you to address or highlight, one, the issue of market research when it comes to the value add and knowing what is actively being taken up by the market. Where would a producer start? And from your experience with Twiga, is Twiga innovating in this in terms of coming up with the criteria that then helps your suppliers to meet what I would call your value addition specifications? Or is Twiga again working with already established standards and grades that perhaps others do not know of. Maybe just add that in as you speak on how best producers can move and make the shift towards value addition as an area of investment.
Thank you, Ricky, and thank you, Jen, for really talking about that. Let me begin by saying this, that value addition in itself is an innovation. If you look at, every day, I look at, for example, the various progressive achievements that our friend on this platform or in this group of soccer called Zuki, what they're doing with the honey. The packaging he used to show us 2 years ago is not what they're showing us today. Things are just, people are just thinking and saying, okay, what would our customers like to see? What else would attract our customer to this particular aspect? So if I was to list down the aspect that the customer, the farmers and producers need to look at, remember there is a growing population that is entering the middle class in Kenya and all the developing countries. And this population is now aware of a number of things. One is starting to be aware of healthy eating, is aware of hygiene, environment, they're looking for convenience. And so a producer needs to start thinking, okay, how conveniently can I pack, present, and deliver my potatoes to the customer? So the aspect of convenience comes in. Now, Jen highlighted something about safety. We are now with awareness of aspects in terms of health. Kenyans are increasingly, thinking that what we do to remain healthy, and eating is one of those things they're focusing on. And so, I know that those will talk about organic, but basically we need to just get back to standards and say that what standard are we producing under to guarantee, a healthy food. So this is one aspect that producers need to sell as a selling point. And therefore, if you produce your product in a healthy environment, you have a certificate of certain standards, that's already value addition. Quality is you just can't produce anything anyhowly, handle it anyhowly, store it anyhowly, and then hope to sell. No, you will then be attracting the bottom end market as opposed to the upper market. I've already mentioned about hygienic handling. When a buyer comes to buy something from your shop or from your farm, how does he perceive or view your product? Is it hygienically handled? Does he see deliberate steps being made to avoid contamination of that particular food? And then presentation, you've been in the supermarket and you can look at now that the strawberries at AAA and other companies are now selling in our shops and our grocery outlets. The presentation again matters. It gives an impression of what is inside that particular pack, that particular bag. And then obviously now there is a new norm in town, and I would call it assortment. You've heard of now people saying, we'll bring you a whole pack to your house. It will be made of sukuma wiki, it'll have spinach, it'll have tomatoes, it will have onions, it will have dania, and it'll have potatoes. They've already imagined what your basket looks like. And this is how Trigger also formed its business. They created the basket that is in the mind of the consumer, the mind of the trader and the vendor. And then the business was built around that. So the assortment is very key. People are now looking at it. If you are going to, it's a value addition in itself, whereby you create a basket that conveniently just, when dropped at the door of the customer or the door of the consumer, then they are willing to pay for it like that. So now back to your question, Ricky, where did the innovation come from? So as it still remains, it's free for all. So whoever comes up with an idea and get the idea flying, they get the benefit. We at Trigger, we tried now to bring some sort of order. We are requiring and supporting our farmers to be Global Gap certified, as case 1758 is getting traction with our Global Gap certified. And now, and also we're also talking about having product leave the farm in what we call market-ready condition. So initially, would pick potatoes, go process them at a warehouse, and then repackage and then take it to the market. Of course, competitiveness include price and cost as well. So we've got it to a level whereby now at farm level, we can do the right sorting, the right grading, the right packaging, and the product comes to the warehouse when it is market ready to go to market. So this is now what we are doing, innovating along together with the farmers, are careful that the benefit also passed over to the farmers. If you look at the way we're handling bananas in Meru, no one handles bananas in that manner. And by doing that, we've been able to bring down post-harvest losses from the dominant 20 to 25% to just 5% because of the processes that we brought in that we call value addition process, where you carefully dismember, bring down the banana bunch, how you make sure it doesn't touch down, how is it carried. So you need to provide a very soft material for it to be carried on. Then it's hung very well, dismembered, washed, cleaned, disinfected, and carefully placed in a crate. And then now transported now the 400 kilometers to Nairobi. That benefit is then passed on to the farmer as well as also we gain from it. So we are, yes, setting the pace, but by working with the farmers to innovate around that. And there are many things that we still are thinking about, and we are going to think about it. As I just told you about, we will be able to create about 7 SKUs out of a normal potato. 7 SKUs, just by trying to say how easy do we make the life of a consumer when it comes to potatoes? What do they use potatoes for? Imagine now, even if you look at our app, we will tell you if you want to cook chips, these are the varieties. So we are calling them chip special. If you want to do mashed potatoes, these are the varieties. You can choose from our app and say, I just want a variety strictly for mashed potatoes. That sort of guidance. Me and you, we've never known any other name of potatoes apart from Shanky. Even when we are given something else, we are told this is Shanky, you take, because Shanky is a brand. Isn't it? Now we've gone beyond that. Yeah, I used to say on the road, I want Shanky on my way from Kakamega or from Eldoret, and I wouldn't know whether I'm being given something else. Now there are many potatoes that look like Shanky, and I must have bought them so many times, thinking I'm buying Shanky. Now we provide that convenience. So it's an innovative space, Ricky, and together with the farmers, we're doing it. And these are the aspects that the farmers look at. How convenient can I make it? How safe, the best quality, hygienic handling, the presentation, and assortment. Those are now the things that are helping farmers and producers do basic value addition that attracts a premium price. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. And I mean, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving to the closing for this particular edition. And I think just trying to kind of summarize from what the panelists have shared. One, we actually do have opportunities to achieve more in terms of returns through embracing value addition. Two, it is not an easy road because there are some disconnects, especially around information and as an aspect of willingness of the market to pay for value-added product. However, this can be overcome by innovation from the point of the trader, and that's, I think, a very critical perspective to take home, that it is actually for the producer or for the entrepreneur to take innovation and see and put to life what consumers are requesting in terms of what we would call value addition. The third point is on the technologies. There is a wide breadth of technologies, and information is accessible. I think Nekesa has given us a very good overview, all the way from what may be considered basic drying as a processing, to very expensive high-tech solar, not solar drying, but high-tech drying technologies. And on top of that, we have been told that at the University of Nairobi, there is a center where we can actually get information on the drying or post-harvest handling options that are there. Jen Musindi has said very clearly that standards are there and the standards are undergoing review, and it is actually open to participation of all who are interested in order to shape how we can achieve some form of uniformity and transparency, especially when it comes to standards and their use for value addition. I think those are some very good sentiments and information that has been shared, and I'm just going to ask all our panelists, starting with Nicholas Sambanya, and then as the only man in the panel, really, I think it's fair to him, just to give us his closing remarks, and then we'll go around the room. We'll go to Nekesa Wafula, and then to Professor Ambuko, and finally to Jen Musindi. So Nicholas, maybe some closing remarks from you.
I didn't realize actually I'm the only man on the panel now. Professor and the other two ladies. Thanks for that. Really, Ricky, what I want to tell the Kenyan producer is that we are in a very interesting space in terms of the changing dynamics of agriculture and food production. But there is room for everyone, to showcase their abilities. Basic value addition could be the key that would unlock, the good pricing and the happiness that the farmers and producers have been looking for. It is an issue of just studying the market, looking for that opportunity to make a difference, to improve something, and that would be enough value addition for the producer to be able to make, and they will change their revenue from what or their earnings from what they do in daily farming. And so calling upon all farmers and all producers to take the initiative, put on an innovative hat, study the market, see what they can do to make their presentation better, their offering better, and that will actually start us on the path towards full value addition, including even now manufacturing. Thank you, Vicky, and a good night to our viewers and listeners.
So maybe what I can start by asking is, and I always pose a question, what is the value proposition of your product? When you're talking about your market as a farmer, what is the value that you're giving this market and to your clients? So let's learn how to know our clients' tastes and preferences, build a unique product, because even in value addition, you don't want to do what everybody else is doing. You want to make your product stand out from the market. It could just be the packaging. It could be the process that you're doing. Let's learn to make unique products, and also look at the costs. When you're looking at a product, make sure that it has a price that can also be affordable to the market that you're targeting.
Thanks, Nekesa. Professor Ambuko, if you're still with us, some maybe your closing remarks.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think like the others have said, value addition is the way to go if you're going to put a little bit more money in farmers' pockets. Like I like what Nicholas said they're doing at Twiga, understanding the consumer, the middle class. They want to pay for convenience, and that convenience that we pay for should go back to the farmer. I don't know if you've been to some of places like Zucchini, Nairobi. Now they cut for us sukuma wiki, they cut for you onions, they cut for you, there are people who are willing to pay for that convenience, So I think value addition is is the way we are going to improve, returns to the farmer. The only challenge for me is that who's pocketing the added value in terms of money? Because it has to go back to, because at the end of the day, we really want to ensure that our farmers also benefit from this value added. Yes, so if farmers themselves add value, like we said, by grading, sorting, whatever they do, the traders really have to pay for that value added, okay? And if the traders can sell the added value in the supermarket or wherever, export market, this value also has to reflect in the returns to the farmers. Okay, so finally, I would just like to say, like somebody like Nekesa said, we have recently established a hub at the University of Nairobi where we are training processors, because at the end of the day, if you add value, that product must meet quality standards. If you've been to our supermarkets, you've seen dried veggies, you've seen dried fruits, but sometimes the quality is wanting. So if you're going to sell value, added value for fruits and veggies, we've got to do it right. And that's how we are coming in with our hub. If there are people who are processing, we're training them on how to do value addition and get quality and safe foods to the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mbuko. Jen Musindi, as you make your closing remarks, maybe even a comment from you on organic in terms of standards for organic where it comes to value addition, and the fact that we are seeing more and more of organic products on the shelves. Maybe you could also just comment on that from a point of view of standards. But as you make your closing remarks, Jen.
Thanks, Ricky. On the organic standards, there are standards that we are supposed to adhere to if we purport to sell organic product. If you're producing for yourself, then really it doesn't matter. But if you're going to guarantee to someone that this is organic produce, there must be a point to refer to for it to be guaranteed organic. Somebody else must have looked at your system. Somebody who is allowed to look at your system must certify your product as organic. There's a lot of people who purport to have organic product, but when you look at their systems, really, it is integrated. It's between organic and non-organic. So it is important, if we are going to embrace the need for standards, we need to embrace the use of standards, because it assures us, the customer, that this producer actually followed all the requirements of producing the product that they guarantee to us they produce. Otherwise, you can never be sure that this is what they do. Now, standards and regulations are there to help us live freely, live a good life, and be sure that what we are getting into our system is what should be within our system. Somebody just can't stand up and say, I am doing this, without actually following a uniform way of producing, or a uniform way of packing that is certified by somebody. It's not, you can't just come and tell me you are doing it. Somebody authorized should come and tell me and assure me, like Kenya Bureau of Standards, that for sure these people here are following what is supposed to be followed. There's a lot of push for standards. Some of them are private, as we got through the presentation last week, but some of them are regulations. There are legal requirements that must be followed. The CARE 1758, as I mentioned, that standard is 50% legal requirements. So if you really need to know how to comply legally, please get a hold of this standard. It will help you navigate a lot of gray areas where standards and regulations are involved. Because again, I said that they have taken into account a lot of other standards that are in the marketplace at the moment. Because we have many producers, we have many players now in the marketplace, it is important that most of these people produce a uniform product, or almost close to a uniform product. I agree with Dr. Arnold that it is important for us to sit as a multi-stakeholder team and agree what this grades and standards of produce will be. It is that because it should be uniform in Makueni or in Kakamega, what a grade 1 product is, size-wise, color-wise. We should just agree so that it will make it easier for farmers to produce a grade that is acceptable to the market and at least get a price that is commensurate with their efforts for producing this product. Thank you. Thanks, Ricky.
Thank you very much, Jen. So I want to just appreciate all our panelists for making time to share your insights and knowledge with us this evening. You have, I think, shed light on value addition and given us as an audience very clear indication of what must be considered. And yes, there are opportunities through value addition to unlock greater gains, especially from a point of reducing post-harvest losses, but also it needs that level of innovation to actually appreciate what the market is looking out for and then tap into that. So to our listeners or viewers, I believe you can reach out to us through SOCA if you would want to engage directly any of the panelists from tonight. You can reach us via email on info@soca.or.ke, but you can also then again visit our website or our YouTube channel and get our contacts there. And we are more than delighted to connect you to any of the panelists from tonight's session or indeed from any of the previous sessions. We are grateful to the panelists for taking time once more. And I think I just want to highlight as we end that in our next segment, we shall be looking at the issues of sustainability for agribusiness, even as we close in this first phase where we have been looking at the whole value chain from agro inputs to production to market access, which we have now done for the last 2 weeks. So we want to just look at aspects of sustainability as we close on phase 1 of the masterclass. And then we shall revert with very, very commodity or value chain specific phase where we'll look at your questions and your queries around very specific value chains. And we've had some opportunity to hear on some of them. You know, we've heard about a bit on mango, we've had the banana and others, but we're going to go into a bit more detail in order to give our audience the ability to just see how they can best leverage their investment in order to make good returns, but also maintain or ensure sustainability, both with the social and environmental aspects in consideration. So in closing, I want to thank the technical team that works behind the scenes to bring the masterclass to you. To Angela Limo, to Lillian Wanjiro, and Nekesa Wafula, and of course Jen Musindi, who's a technical coordinator for SOCA in addition to her other roles, and Nekesa Wafula, who always moderates for us, and today we've put her on the floor just to tap into her experience again. We wish to thank you all, and I wish you all a great evening. Join us again next week for another session of the SOCA Masterclass. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.